My mother tried to give my newborn baby up for adoption behind my back so he wouldn't steal my sister's wedding spotlight. I, Sarah, 28, always knew my relationship with my mother, Linda, 56, and sister, Emily, 26, was strained. But it's reached a new level of insanity that I couldn't have imagined. My dad died from lung cancer 3 years ago. We were extremely close, and his death hit me hard. On his deathbed, he made me promise to look after my mom because he didn't trust Emily to do it. She's always been the golden child, spoiled, entitled, and self-centered. I agreed because, despite our issues, she was still my mother. After Dad died, I supported my mom emotionally and financially. I paid her bills when she was short, drove her to appointments, and checked in regularly. Meanwhile, Emily barely called her once a month, but somehow remained the favorite. My mom always had excuses for her behavior while criticizing mine. That's how it's always been in our family. Fast forward to 9 months ago. I was 6 months pregnant with my first child when Emily got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years, Mark, 29. I was genuinely happy for her at first. When my mom called to tell me, I congratulated her and asked about their plans. She said Emily wanted a big wedding, which meant lots of planning time. Then my mom's tone changed. She started talking about how worried she was that my pregnancy and new baby would steal attention from Emily's wedding. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My pregnancy wasn't planned to coincide with Emily's engagement. It just happened that way. Besides, I wasn't even going to be at the wedding since it was scheduled for when my baby would be only a few weeks old. A week later, my mom showed up at my house unannounced. I was already dealing with pregnancy discomfort and work stress, so I wasn't in the best mood. What she asked next left me speechless. She wanted me to hide my pregnancy and newborn from family and friends until after Emily's wedding. She suggested I not post on social media, skip family gatherings, and basically disappear so Emily could have her moment. I lost it. I asked her if she seriously expected me to hide my child from the world for months, just so Emily wouldn't feel overshadowed. She said I was being selfish and that I could have planned better with my pregnancy. The argument escalated until I told her to leave. We didn't speak for weeks after that. When I went into labor, my husband, Tom, 30, called my mom. She said she was busy helping Emily with wedding stuff and couldn't come. That was the moment I realized where I stood in her priorities. Tom's parents came instead and were amazing support. I gave birth to our son, Liam, and we were overjoyed despite the family drama. 3 weeks passed with no contact from my mom or sister. I was adjusting to motherhood and, honestly, the peace was nice. Then, last Friday, my phone exploded with frantic calls and texts from my mom. I ignored them at first, but they kept coming, so I finally answered. What she told me made my blood run cold. She said she was in legal trouble for attempting to put my baby up for adoption. I thought I misheard her, but no, she had actually gone to an adoption agency for documents and claimed that Tom and I were both drug addicts who had been deemed unfit parents by a court. She told them she had power of attorney over us and could make decisions for our child. The adoption agency became suspicious when some documents didn't add up. They investigated and discovered her fraud. Now she was facing criminal charges for forgery, fraud, and attempted kidnapping. She was crying, begging me to help her, saying she only did it because she didn't want Emily's wedding spotlight to be stolen by my baby. I was in shock. I couldn't process what I was hearing. My own mother tried to give away my child. I hung up without saying anything. Later that day, someone from the adoption agency called to confirm what happened and apologize for the situation. They explained they'd stopped the process before any paperwork was finalized once they realized something was wrong. They asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said I needed to think about it. Tom was livid when I told him. We spent all weekend discussing our options and finally decided to sue my mother. We consulted a lawyer who said we had a strong case for emotional distress. Defamation, she told the agency we were drug addicts and attempted kidnapping. My mother was arrested but released on house arrest with an ankle monitor. She's been sending me emails every day, crying about how sorry she is and reminding me of my promise to my dad to take care of her. She claimed she was just trying to help Emily and didn't think it through, that she loves me and Liam and would never really have given him away. I don't believe her. Someone who loves you doesn't try to give your child away to strangers. I'm moving forward with both a civil lawsuit and supporting the criminal charges. Tom is firmly on my side, and his family has been incredibly supportive. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare. I can't sleep thinking about what could have happened if the adoption agency hadn't caught on. The thought of my son being given to strangers while I desperately searched for him makes me physically ill. I never thought my own mother could betray me like this, no matter how much she favored Emily. I keep thinking about my promise to my dad, but I'm sure he never imagined this scenario. He wanted me to make sure she was okay financially and not alone, not to let her destroy my life. Tom says my first responsibility now is to our son, and I agree, but breaking a deathbed promise, even in these circumstances, weighs heavily on me. The civil lawsuit is asking for reimbursement of all the money I've spent supporting my mom since my dad died, plus damages for the emotional trauma. I know she has money from my dad's life insurance and pension that she's been saving for Emily's wedding, so she can afford it. My uncle has also said he'd step in to help her financially if needed. Emily hasn't reached out at all. I assume she's on Mom's side and blames me for the wedding being affected. Fine by me. I'm done with both of them at this point. Meanwhile, I'm trying to focus on my son, who deserves better than this drama. I'm just glad we caught this before it was too late. The legal proceedings will be stressful, but worth it to ensure my mom never tries anything like this again. Am I wrong for pursuing legal action against my own mother? Part of me feels guilty for breaking my promise to my dad, but a bigger part feels like this crossed every possible line. Update 1. First, thank you to everyone for the overwhelming support. It helped me realize I wasn't overreacting or being vindictive. My mother's actions were truly horrific. The past 2 weeks have been chaotic. We attempted mediation at my lawyer's suggestion, but it failed spectacularly. My mother would start crying and screaming whenever we discussed what she did, making productive conversation impossible. I couldn't tell if her breakdowns were genuine or calculated to gain sympathy, but either way, they derailed every session. After the third failed attempt, my lawyer advised we proceed with the lawsuit. The evidence against her is overwhelming, and her behavior in mediation didn't help her case. Then my uncle Robert, 58, my dad's brother, got involved. He called me last weekend demanding I drop the lawsuit. He said the amount I was asking for was way too huge and unfair, and that I was being ungrateful after everything my mother had done for me. He brought up how she raised me, put me through college, which isn't true. My dad's insurance paid for that and was there for me during difficult times. Also not true. I lost my temper and told him he didn't know the whole story. When he kept pushing, I suggested he pay the settlement himself if he was so concerned about my mother's finances. He hung up on me. Then the family gossip machine kicked into high gear. Emily has been telling everyone that I'm vindictively trying to ruin her wedding out of jealousy. She's painting me as the villain who's attacking our poor, grieving mother. Several relatives have called or messaged me, asking why I'm being so harsh on my mom over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, that's what they're calling an attempt to put my child up for adoption without my knowledge or consent. I've had to explain the situation repeatedly, which has been emotionally draining. It's isolating to realize how many family members are willing to excuse such a betrayal, but I've also realized I need to address these false narratives, especially since some family members might be called to testify if the case goes to trial. The irony isn't lost on me that my mother's attempt to prevent my baby from overshadowing Emily's wedding has created a much bigger scandal than a new family member ever could have. It's a twisted kind of poetic justice, though I'd much rather none of this had happened. On the legal front, things are progressing. The criminal case is being handled by the district attorney, who seems determined to make an example of my mother. They've charged her with multiple felonies, including forgery, fraud, attempted kidnapping, and filing false reports. If convicted, she could face jail time. Our civil case is running parallel to the criminal one. My lawyer is confident we'll win, especially once the criminal verdict comes in. My mother's lawyer has reached out about settling out of court, which suggests they know they can't win. Tom and I discussed the settlement option and decided to consider it, but only if it meets our terms. We're not just looking for financial compensation anymore. We want a formal admission of guilt and a restraining order to protect our family. My mother continues to email daily, though I've blocked her phone number. Her messages alternate between tearful apologies and manipulative reminders of my promise to my dad. In her latest email, she claimed my dad would be ashamed of me for abandoning her in her time of need. That was the final straw. I blocked her email too. Liam is now 5 weeks old and thriving, despite the chaos around him. Tom has been my rock through all of this, taking care of the baby when I'm dealing with lawyers or having bad days. His parents have also been incredible, bringing meals and offering childcare so I can rest. The contrast between Tom's family and mine couldn't be more stark. His parents are warm, supportive people who respect boundaries and genuinely want to help. They never make me feel guilty or try to manipulate me. Being around them makes me realize how dysfunctional my family really is. I've started wondering if my dad knew more about my mother's true nature than he let on. Maybe his request for me to look after her wasn't just because Emily was irresponsible, but because he knew my mother needed supervision. It's a disturbing thought, but it would explain a lot. The wedding drama continues in the background. Emily is angry that our mother might not be able to contribute as much financially due to legal fees and potential settlement costs. She's delayed the wedding but is still planning an extravagant event, now with Mark's parents covering more of the cost. I received a particularly nasty message from her last week, blaming me for ruining what should have been the happiest time of her life. I didn't respond. There's nothing I could say that would make her understand the severity of what happened. For now, I'm focusing on caring for Liam and following through with the legal process. I've accepted that my relationship with my mother and sister is likely beyond repair, and honestly, that might be for the best. Some bridges should stay burned. Update 2. The situation has developed in ways I never anticipated. After extensive negotiations, my mother agreed to settle the civil case on our terms. She'll pay back all the money I've given her since my dad died, plus damages for emotional distress and legal fees. The agreement also includes a restraining order preventing her from contacting me, Tom, or Liam. Her demeanor changed dramatically in the final mediation sessions. She was subdued, avoided eye contact, and followed her lawyer's instructions without argument. I suspect her lawyer finally made her understand the gravity of her situation and convinced her that settling was her best option. The criminal case is still proceeding. The DA is pushing for jail time, though my mother's lawyer is fighting for probation and mandatory mental health treatment instead. I've been called to testify, along with staff from the adoption agency and a couple of family members who had relevant information. The trial is scheduled for next month. Last weekend, we visited Tom's great-grandparents, who live about 3 hours away. They're in their 90s but sharp as ever. When we told them what happened, they were horrified but also reassuring. Tom's great-grandfather, who rarely speaks about emotional matters, told me I was right to break my promise to my dad under these circumstances. He said promises made to the dead shouldn't destroy the living. Something about hearing that from someone of his generation and wisdom helped ease my guilt. Meanwhile, family drama continues. I've stopped responding to relatives who question my decisions or try to defend my mother. I realize many of them only have a watered-down version of events from Emily or my uncle. I sent a single, factual email to the extended family, explaining exactly what happened, including copies of some of the legal documents, then stepped back from the conversation. Those who still choose to believe I'm overreacting aren't people I need in my life. The settlement money arrived last week. After paying off our legal fees, We're putting the rest in a trust for Liam's future education. It feels right to transform something so negative into something positive for his future. Then yesterday, Emily showed up at our door unannounced. She was furious, screaming that I'd ruined her wedding because our mother could no longer afford to contribute as much as promised. I pointed out that the money was originally mine anyway. Money I'd spent supporting our mother while Emily contributed nothing. She didn't like that. I shut the door in her face, but she continued screaming on our porch. When she started making threats, I called the police. The officers arrived quickly and escorted her away while neighbors watched from their yards. It was humiliating but necessary. After that incident, Tom and I decided to get a restraining order against Emily too, and started looking at houses in a different neighborhood. We love our current home, but the thought of Emily showing up again, possibly when Liam is older and can understand what's happening, is too much. We're also changing our phone numbers and email addresses. Between family members trying to guilt us and random acquaintances fishing for gossip, the constant messages have become overwhelming. The whole situation has been financially draining. Between legal fees, newborn expenses, and now an unexpected move, our savings have taken a hit. The settlement helps, but starting over somewhere new won't be cheap. Still, it's worth it for our peace of mind. Through all this, Tom has been incredibly supportive. His entire family has rallied around us, offering help with the move, childcare, and emotional support. I'm grateful every day that Liam will grow up with at least one side of the family that's loving and normal. Update 3. This will be my final update on this situation. We've moved on with our lives, and after this, I won't be discussing these events publicly anymore. My mother was convicted on all charges. The judge was particularly harsh in his sentencing statement, saying her actions were a profound betrayal of the most sacred trust between a mother and daughter. She received a substantial fine, part of which goes to us and part to the adoption agency, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory treatment at a mental health rehabilitation facility. She avoided jail time, primarily due to her age and lack of prior criminal record. I didn't attend the sentencing. I heard about it from my cousin, who was there to support my uncle. My mother apparently looked shocked when the verdict was read, as if she truly believed she would face no serious consequences for her actions. The restraining order against Emily was granted without issue. We've moved to a new house about 30 minutes from our old one, far enough to be inconvenient for unwanted visitors, but close enough that Tom's commute isn't too bad. The settlement money covered our moving expenses and helped us put a down payment on the new place. In a surprising twist, Emily publicly denounced our mother's actions on social media last week. She claimed she had no knowledge of what our mother had planned and was horrified to learn the details. This directly contradicts her earlier support of our mother and the accusations she hurled at me. Her sudden change of heart came after Mark's parents expressed concerns about associating with someone involved in such a scandal. Apparently, their approval matters more to her than family loyalty. I actually feel a bit sorry for my mother. Betrayed by the daughter she sacrificed everything for. Our new home is peaceful. We've changed all our contact information and only shared it with people we trust completely. Tom's family visits regularly, and Liam is growing into a happy, healthy baby. He recently started smiling, which makes all the stress and drama fade into the background. I sometimes think about my dad and whether I fulfilled my promise to him. I believe I did. I looked after my mother financially and emotionally for years after his death. I couldn't have anticipated that she would commit crimes against my child, and I don't think he would have expected me to stand by her through that. In the end, I chose to protect my son, and I know that's what any good parent would do. To those who supported me through this ordeal, thank you. Your validation helped me stay strong when I doubted myself. To those who are dealing with toxic family members, remember that blood relation doesn't entitle anyone to harm you or your children. Sometimes walking away is the healthiest choice you can make. I have no contact with my mother or sister now. I don't know if Emily's wedding is still happening, and I don't care. My focus is entirely on my husband, my son, and the family we're building together, one based on love and respect rather than manipulation and favoritism. This chapter of my life is closed. We're moving forward, and we're going to be okay.